You're listening to Retro Reels, a show that looks back on films from time gone by and recalls the various events, trends, and perspectives that informed their creation. I'm your host, Hanna, here to guide you through a trip to the past via the silver screen. Okay, so now that I have the first episode out of the way and some of the pressure is off, I want to jump straight in with a series of episodes featuring a director for the month. And the first one I've picked is Hong Kong director, screenwriter, and producer Wong Kar Wai. July is his birthday month, so it feels appropriate to highlight him at this time. I won't be covering his entire filmography one after another, as that would take a really long time and it would just be too much of the same thing in a row. So I'm thinking it would be best to limit it to a few episodes in a row on a single theme or person. And that should give me enough time to delve a little bit deeper before moving on, while at the same time not letting things get too stale. Wong Kar Wai was born in Shanghai on July 17th, 1958, and at the age of 5, he ended up relocating to Hong Kong with his parents to dodge the effects of the Cultural Revolution in China. Unfortunately, his two older siblings got stuck back in Shanghai because the borders closed before they had a chance to join the rest of the family in Hong Kong. So he didn't see them again for about a decade, and effectively spent his formative years experiencing life as an only child. So he was pretty isolated growing up for this reason, and it didn't help that he also took a while to get the hang of speaking Cantonese and English. So he ended up escaping into watching movies. Recounting his life, it sounds a little bit familiar to me in a way. I grew up in a very rural part of the South in the United States, and the way small towns work, if most of your family wasn't born and raised there, then you'll more or less always remain an outsider. And it didn't help that I was visibly foreign in a place with a majority white population. My parents also moved in from way out of town and never really made the effort to ingratiate themselves into the larger community either. And to top things off, I was never around in the summers when all of my classmates would go to Girl Scout camp or do swim team and other activities together, because that's when my mom and I would come back to Taiwan to visit family. So I consistently missed out on opportunities to integrate normally with the community. Not that I'm complaining, because it really doesn't matter at all. It's just a crappy little nothing town, and I was a lot better off coming back to Taiwan to bond with my family members. But growing up is pretty hard when you don't have many friends, because when you're a kid, the approval of your peer group is something you naturally really want and need. So not unlike Wong Kar Wai, I grew up kind of lonely, and I spent most of my time watching movies and TV at home. Wong Kar Wai has a very distinctive style of filmmaking, distinctive enough that he's referred to as an auteur, which is French for author, and basically implies that the director's control over the filmmaking process is so total as to make that movie uniquely their movie. A lot of auteurs tend to make really personal movies that are somewhat autobiographical, or that consistently return to certain themes that they care the most about. You get the sense that they're trying to work something out, trying to understand something about themselves or something that happened to them by making movies. Of course, all movie directors tend to have a style of their own, whether they're an auteur or not, but auteurs will usually pour much more of their own soul into a movie. You can often identify a Spielberg movie based on certain filmmaking techniques he likes to use, but nothing about Spielberg himself is really imbued in his movies. Whereas with someone like Wong Kar Wai, you can almost always see him and all the hopes and dreams and memories that keep him up at night in what he makes. Auteurs are not especially concerned with making blockbusters with mass appeal. Often what they're doing is making some very involved visual audio journal entries. So a big part of the risk you take as an auteur is that if someone doesn't like one of your movies, it's very possible they won't like most of them, because they're largely going to feel pretty similar in some regard. Having said all that, I'm going to kick off the series on Wong Kar Wai with a discussion of his 1988 film As Tears Go By, which was his directorial debut. You get a sense of this new guy on the scene, filled with ideas and creative potential, and he's emerging from his menteeship under director Patrick Tam and establishing a foundation for what's to come. Right away, you're introduced to what ends up being some hallmarks of his style. The way he plays with angles and with chiaroscuro, how he likes to pan the camera in unexpected ways, and of course, the overly saturated look that has black hair looking purple and bathes entire scenes in neon blue or burning orange. In particularly tense or dramatic sequences, he often utilizes a technique called step printing, in which he shoots on an uncharacteristically low shutter speed. And this gives the footage a really blown out, blurry, and kind of stuttering effect that seems to move in slow motion while somehow at the same time implying that what's taking place is happening at a dramatic speed, faster than the eye can follow. It's the polar opposite of what you might see when you watch a martial arts movie and they take clear, laser-focused footage highlighting a series of punches during a fight so you can see just how clean and how fast and how precise the hero can strike. The step printing Wong Kar Wai uses is much more chaotic, befitting the kind of reckless brawls and shootouts that take place between gangsters. It really has the effect of placing you there in the midst of the action. Another consistent hallmark of Wong Kar Wai's movie-making style is his use of music contemporary to the time. This inevitably dates the movie, but on this show, we embrace that sort of thing. Unfortunately, I couldn't obtain a version of Sandy Lamb's Cantonese rendition of Take My Breath Away, which serves as the theme for Hua and Noor's romance throughout the movie, so I had to default to Berlin's original 1986 version. It sounds almost exactly the same, though. She even sings the chorus in English. My overall impression watching As Tears Go By, especially having seen all of Wong Kar Wai's better later works, is you can tell he's very young. The movie feels undeniably juvenile, but also very enthusiastic. It also gives you a good long look at this obsession he has with coolness, the childish fascination young men tend to have with the petty crime scene, with gangsters and violence and guns and how tough guys slap around women. It's the ultimate masculine fantasy. You can just picture Wong Kar Wai behind the camera wearing those corny sunglasses he's always photographed wearing and living vicariously through the leading man and handsome anti-hero. In this case, you have Hua, played by Andy Lau, who is a triad member and the Hong Kong equivalent of a made man in American mobster terms. Really, he's not much more than a two-bit gangster and enforcer who primarily beats guys up to collect debts. His underling, Fly, is very hot-headed, very hungry to prove himself, and pretty much constantly getting into trouble, leaving Hua to clean up after him. This puts Hua and Fly at odds with another gang member, Tony, whom Fly owes a large sum of money that he can't pay back. Hua gets Fly a real job to get him out of the gangster scene because he's really more trouble than he's worth, but this doesn't last, of course, and Fly ends up provoking Tony to a point where he's beaten nearly to death. When Hua comes to the rescue, the same fate befalls him. Meanwhile, Hua has developed a romantic relationship with Noor, played by Maggie Cheung, who stayed with him at the beginning of the film so she could get medical care in the city. For a while, he stays with Noor out at Lantau Island and takes advantage of this doctor she's involved with to patch him up, but inevitably he ends up back in the city to save Fly from himself. The plot is notably straightforward for Wong Kar Wai, who is known for shooting a lot of dreamy sequences and flashbacks. It's also, frankly, a little bit weak, and it gets more and more frustrating the longer you watch it. Since As Tears Go By was inspired by Martin Scorsese's 1973 movie Mean Streets, I threw that on to watch the following day so I could get a better sense of what was motivating Wong Kar Wai. And the answer lies squarely in the two leading men, especially Robert De Niro's character Johnny Boy, who he portrays in a way that only De Niro can, by turns deeply charming, funny, and frustrating. I can see how seduced Wong Kar Wai was by De Niro and by Harvey Keitel. The problem is, Scorsese is, and employs in his friend Mardik Martin, a vastly superior scriptwriter. As soon as you see them in Mean Streets, you understand the rapport between Charlie and Johnny Boy, who the characters Hua and Fly are obviously based on. Scorsese is able to establish in just a few scenes, just a few lines of dialogue, that these two guys go way back and that is where Charlie's loyalty to Johnny comes from, even though Johnny is consistently nothing but a problem. Plus, Charlie's romantically involved with Johnny's cousin, and he himself is a complex character who is motivated in part by Catholic guilt. He has trouble reconciling his lifestyle with his religion, and that's all made very, very clear in Mean Streets. Apart from being able to write more fully realized characters, Scorsese also has the benefit of stronger actors on his side. And it's not that Andy Lau and Jackie Cheung aren't good, it's just really hard to outclass De Niro and Keitel, and more importantly, no actor could be good enough to make up for how flatly Wong Kar Wai wrote these characters. Hua and Fly, their motivations, the overall narrative is just not nearly as developed. Watching it with me, my husband Aaron was actually confused by their relationship from beginning to end. He was convinced they were literally brothers because that's how gangsters address each other in Cantonese, and because there was just no other way that he could make sense of this blind loyalty Wah had for Fly. It was simply never successfully established why Wah was so willing to hang himself out to dry for Fly, and the whole movie really hinges on that. And as nice as it is to see Maggie Cheung on screen, who found through Wong Kar Wai a way to redeem herself from being typecast as the silly girlfriend she started out as in Jackie Chan's police story movies, it was impossible for me to buy the love story that developed between Noor and Wah. What is there to like about this guy? He shoves women around. He tells them outright that he'll never be there for them when they need him. In the beginning of the movie, you see him getting aggressive with his girlfriend Mabel, who tells him she just got back from aborting his baby at the hospital and dumps him. He reacts by slamming her into a wall, grabbing her face, and threatening her. Later on in the movie, he comes across Mabel again, who is by that point happily married, clearly pregnant with a baby she actually wants, and waiting for her husband to pick her up. The realization that Wah can't play with Mabel anymore is what finally motivates him to hit up Noor, who he has basically been ignoring since he met her, even though they had a little bit of chemistry. And by the time he shows up to bother Noor, she's already gotten involved with a doctor. Noor even asks him, "What took you so long to look me up?" And he literally admits that he just doesn't care that much. This is me, take it or leave it. And she takes it? Please. We all know bad boys are fun to date for a little while, but when an actually viable candidate for marriage comes on the scene, you wise up, you ditch the bad boy, and you marry the doctor. So all you can do is laugh at her. Like, this guy sucks. What is the appeal? And I'm not even going to touch on the detail that she and Wah are technically cousins. That's just too weird. I can only speculate that Wong Kar Wai added that detail in to spice things up, to make it somehow even more illicit. I really don't know. I can only guess. But it's very strange. And it's not something that's lost in translation either. It's made clear from the very beginning. So weird. Aaron has always hated gangster movies, which I understand because it's such an obsessively masculine genre. Watching it as someone who is uninterested in such a strongly gendered theme, it just looks really stupid. Ooh, violence, ooh, money, loyalty and honor, and the struggle that being so tough and manly gives you with relating to women. Yeah, whatever, man. Why don't you grow up and get a real job? Wong Kar Wai never really does get over this penchant he has for noir or for the influence of gangster films, but thankfully he is able to make it his own over time. So I know it sounds like I had a lot to dog him about in this movie, but he definitely redeems himself later on in his career, and that will reflect in the way I cover his later films, especially the ones that I really, really enjoy. This one, it's not like horrible or anything. It's just not my kind of movie. And it's also very obvious that he's new to the scene. He's just kind of stretching his legs. And most critical reviews of the time make the same observation. I'll have a lot more to say about Wong Kar Wai in the next few episodes, so I hope you guys will stay tuned. That's all I have for you guys today. I'm Hanna Belinsky. Thank you for tuning in to Retro Reels, and I hope you'll join me again next time on another look back on the way things were.